Well, what do you know? Disney Plus finally has another new original show besides The Mandalorian that doesn't seem like it was made for the Disney Channel. Not that there's anything wrong with it. Some people really love the Disney Channel. I even on occasion enjoy the Disney Channel, usually when I'm in Disney World. But streaming services are supposed to have variation because they're so vast, and so far Disney Plus does not have that. But before we talk about whether or not the right stuff has the right stuff, I have some exciting news for you. And that's that I'm producing and co-hosting New York Comic Con's daily live kickoff show, which starts tomorrow. And we have an amazing lineup. My co-host is Jackie Azawa from Rooster Teeth. And tomorrow we're talking to Abubakar Salim from Raised by Wolves. Then on Friday, Alex Winter from Bill and Ted Face the Music. Saturday, we're talking to the showrunner and writer of X-Men, the animated series, who are putting out a new book, which comes out next week. And they're going to talk to us all about it. And we're going to ask them a bunch of behind-the-scenes questions. It's going to be great. And then on Sunday, Ed Boon from Mortal Kombat is going to come in and talk to us. And it's going to be particularly amazing because there's a pretty big reveal for Mortal Kombat 11 tomorrow. I don't know what it is. We're going to find out tomorrow, but I'll certainly be asking Ed about it. Jackie and I will be asking him about it on Sunday. Now, you can join us live. Anyone can comment. The times and links are down below in the video description, or you can even drop in afterwards and watch the replay. We're going to have a really fun time. All right, so The Right Stuff, of course, is already a 3-hour, well, first it was a book, but then it was a 3-hour plus Oscar-winning movie. It got nominated for all the big Oscars, but it won the secondary, more technical categories, but still, it's an Oscar winner. And you, of course, most recently saw it with its cameo in Captain Marvel, where Carol picked it up off of the shelf at Blockbuster because it looked pretty darn good. I thought that was really cute that they did that. Speaking of Marvel, by the way, I only watched the first 2 episodes. They gave me the first 5, but I had enough with 2. In the first 2 episodes, they had some things that were so much like Marvel movies. They had like the running moment in Winter Soldier, and then they had shots that seemed very much like Captain Marvel, because Captain Marvel, of course, is a fellow pilot, a test pilot. This did make me wish that Captain Marvel, the movie, had pushed that narrative more in her own film. But I was like, how could you do these shots when the general public has just seen them in Marvel movies, which, by the way, are owned by Disney, the service that you're on. I'm just surprised that nobody on set stepped up and said, we can't do that without an obvious nod to unless you're going to make it super obvious that you're doing a Marvel movie reference. Now, of course, The Right Stuff came about way before any of those Marvel movies. It was released in 1983. And since then, there have been many, 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 many other films and television shows about the space race. In fact, there have been so many that most recently, someone even said, to make it a little different, let's talk about what would have happened if Russia had gotten there first. Of course, over on Apple TV. So now, for some reason, Leonardo DiCaprio and Warner Brothers Television have decided to revisit Tom Wolfe's classic book for National Geographic and Disney Plus. And it was super weird, by the way, to see Warner Brothers Television come up on the screen while watching something that's supposed to air on Disney Plus. I mean, I don't know how they're going to sort out all these brands, but I mean, I think because we have to pay for all these streaming services individually, and it ain't cheap, you really want to create brand loyalty. And this idea that, everything could live anywhere, I don't think helps with that. You want to be like, you're in Disney's, you're in the Mouse's house now. But then, here's our dinner guest, Warner Brothers. It was weird. Now, instead of 3 hours, this miniseries has 8 hours to tell the story of the Mercury 7. But at least from the first 2 episodes, they don't seem to do much with the extra time, except take their time. It was like nothing was there. I mean, it's the same story we've seen countless times and from more imaginative angles. I mean, once the story has been told, as it was told in the book and then again in 1983 in a visual medium, people have found much more interesting angles of approach. So it's weird to come back to step 1. In fact, I would go even further than that, because I think Disney Plus's The Right Stuff seems less like a giant leap for mankind and more like a giant leap backwards for Hollywood. Because once again, square-jawed matinee idols are front and center, who, at least as portrayed here, have no interest in any other demographic, which would also be fine. I mean, it's tough to get audiences to care about somebody who clearly would have no interest in them if they met them in real life, which is how I felt watching this show. But if you can give me a really complex exploration of why these people are that way, well, then we'll allow it, and maybe we'll even enjoy it. But this doesn't do that either. Sure, Patrick J. Adams' John Glenn has some nice words for the African-American gentleman who sells him his paper each morning. And there are wives in the show. They have each astronaut's wife. But these characters might as well be cardboard cutouts, quite frankly. And Hollywood has often done that in the past with such characters. But after a lot of complaining on social media and sending Hollywood a message with our ticket purchases, we thought we made it clear we didn't want any more cardboard cutouts. And yet, here they are. Now, it wouldn't be so bad, again, if the portrayal of the Mercury 7 themselves was more nuanced. But instead, I feel like I'm watching Men Lite. And even that show had very strong female characters, if not strong characters of color, unfortunately. Even Mad Men had a little bit of ways to go. Now, some of you might be typing, well, Grace, there wasn't as much diversity in the time periods that these, Mad Men and Right Stuff are portraying. So these other individuals simply weren't around. But you can't say that because thanks to Hollywood, in fact, we know that NASA actually had a diverse group of people working there. So while they've been left out of stories in the past, now that we're in 2020 with all the progress that has been made with the stories that are being told and in society and culture, to leave them out again is inexcusable and downright sad to see that progress erased on this show from, a lot of big names. So it's really, again, as I said, very unfortunate. I mean, the Mercury 7 are not just obtuse, as they're portrayed here, but they display appalling behavior in their personal lives. Textbook toxic. And there's, again, no explanation or exploration. It's just the boys will be boys attitude, which is also played out for a reason. Jake McDormand's Alan Shepard is particularly unlikable. He's basically Gaston, but with none of Gaston's humor and charm. In fact, a psychiatrist says to him early on in the show, well, I only watched the first 2 episodes, as you know, but the psychiatrist says, oh, Alan, you're so unself-aware, it's going to come up and catch up with you. It's going to catch up with you. And I feel like this show was self-aware. When Disney made Gaston, they created that villain, they knew who he was. The guy doing the voice knew who he was. The animator knew who he was. They were all in on the joke. And I feel like this Right Stuff show is not in on the joke of the characters they're portraying. Not that they're not heroes, but obviously they're trying to show you that they're not just, that they're complex guys with, pasts and personal lives that should make them relatable to you. But in fact, I found that their past and personal lives made them less relatable to, I think, the vast majority of the population and the people who will tune into this. Also, I have to say, even from an acting perspective on lighter things, Patrick J. Adams' Middle American accent is very uneven. Sometimes I thought he was from Texas. I had to look it up, and John Glenn, it turns out, is from Ohio. And then also, speaking of speech patterns, if you're going to show that John Glenn's wife has a severe stutter, again, in 2020, you have to explain and explore why a grown woman has a severe stutter. They're like, here's John Glenn's wife. She's just your traditional housewife in the 1960s, but with a severe stutter. You're like, oh, are we going to look into that at all? And they're like, no, we're not. And you're like, that's weird. I mean, at least they didn't in the first 2 episodes. But I've never seen that portrayed before. And I think I've seen The Right Stuff, but it was when I was little. I don't remember it. Yes, that's right. I love movies because my parents would have me sit down and watch 3-hour movies. It was great. But I just feel that if a woman has such a severe stutter, I think you have to address it. I think it's unfair not to. But speaking of Hollywood, one thing that I did find interesting and unique about the show is that, they only did it in 1 episode and they didn't go far enough with it as I would have liked. But I did think it was very interesting to show how NASA hired Tinseltown, people who actually worked in Tinseltown, to come on board and make the Mercury 7 popular with the general public and also handle them as celebrities. Because who has experience with celebrities? Hollywood. I thought that was really cool. And the reason that NASA wanted to do that was because they wanted the general public to be in favor of all the money that government was spending on the space program. And the reason that they felt the space program was so important was because, of course, of the Russians were in a race with them, for supremacy, in space, of the planet. And so that's, the stakes are very high, but, Hollywood was necessary to sell that. It shows the importance of publicity, publicists, marketing. I thought that was a really cool approach. And I wish, again, they'd done more of that and pulling back the curtains on how heroes are made by other people, in fact. And I think that's very interesting. And if they had done the whole show from that perspective, really done a Mad Men style take on this, I think that would have maybe been a way to make it worth revisiting this material. And then also, again, find the people. Like, again, I want to point this out because, again, I want to reiterate this because some of you might be like, but again, Grace, this was who, in terms of diversity, this was these were the players. Sure, that, people, women and people of color might not have been the main players, but they were there. They might have been on the fringe. But I think that in 2020, again, when the story's already been told, it's the responsibility of the story being told today to go find a couple of those characters on the fringe and explore what it was like for them to be on the fringe, to give people today some context of what it was like back then for people like us. I think that's really, really important, especially when you're, again, retelling a story again that's been told so many times before, and you have the luxury of time with a miniseries versus a movie. I feel very strongly about it. It was weird watching this show. It shows how far we've come in just say the last year with the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter movement. I think it shows really how far we have come. And this show seems even more dated than it was when they made it. So that's my review of The Right Stuff on Disney Plus. I'll be curious to see what your reaction is to it. It debuts this Friday on the streaming service. Share those thoughts down below. Subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.